last couple videos I've been working on the 4L80 rebuild, so we tore it down, inspected it. I did take some time yesterday and I welded up the crack that was on the bell housing. So that should be good to go, but while I wait for the other parts, I'm going to install some parts that I have here. I have the BTR Stage 3 Turbo Cam and a BTR 660 valve spring kit with push rods. So this has been sitting here for a few days. While I'm waiting on parts, I'm going to install these. Let's get to it. So to get that done, I'm going to drain all the fluid out of the radiator, start unbolting everything, and get that stuff out of the way. I'll take the serpentine belt off so I can get to the water pump. I'll remove the water pump and I will remove the balancer. To remove the balancer, I'm just using this 3-jaw puller that I got off of eBay. It works pretty good. I've used it quite a few times and it's probably the best puller that I've used. Next, I can remove the 10mm bolts that are holding the timing cover on. This will expose the cam gear and timing chain. We'll get those taken off and then we can start getting the cam out. Also going to be installing valve springs, so I'll go ahead and remove the valve covers. So there will be some 10mm bolts that are holding the coil packs on. Then I can use an 8mm to get the valve covers off and expose the valve springs. Now we have 4 more bolts for this cam retainer plate. I'll just pry away at this until it comes off. And the cam is ready to come out. So I did buy a new retainer plate right away because this seal is usually flat, so I usually replace this. But before we pull the cam out, because the engine's not upside down, there's 2 oil galley holes right here that you have to put a 5/16 rod through so the lifters don't fall in. If you pull the cam out, the lifters can actually fall into the engine. So we don't want to do that. I'm going to find some rods and I'm going to stick them in there, then we can pull the cam out. Okay, so I got my little dowels in there. I ended up using a piece of 3/8 brake line and then I smashed it down so it would fit in there. Turn the cam around a couple times and then this is all the way at the back cover. So these things are in all the way and I'm ready to pull the cam out. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to use a little bit of assembly lube and then I'll wipe it on the lobes of the cam and then we can put it in. And what I'll do is I'll have the cam ready so as soon as I pull this thing out I can put the new one right back in there. Alright, new cam ready to go right in. And there we go. It's in. All done. Now we should be good and safe to pull our dowels out. Now that the cam is in, we can start putting everything on the front half back together. Got the retainer plate back in, all the bolts tightened back down. One good thing to do that I didn't do is turn the crank over and line the crank and the cam up dot to dot before you pull it apart. That way you can pull it back together dot to dot. So right now what I have to do is find the dot and get it back in the right position. So I put the crank pulley bolt back on and that way I can turn the crank over by hand and get it all back together the right way. All right, so next I'm going to be hopping up on top of here and changing out the valve springs. So I'm going to be using this compression tester hose with compressed air to put it in the cylinder. So take the spark plugs out, put the hose in there, keep air in the cylinder which will hold the valves up, then you can take each spring off. This is the tool I'm going to be using here. It basically just bolts into where the rocker studs are and you can do 2 springs at a time, so it works out pretty slick. I've used other tools before. This one's definitely my favorite. Alright, so I got the tool installed, ready to get started. I just got to hook this line up to the compressed air and then I can start compressing the springs to take the springs out. If you'd like to see a more detailed video on how to do this, check out this video right here. I did the same spring swap on a different set of heads and I was able to do it on the bench so you can see what's going on a little bit better. Let's get these things done. Just want to jump in here quick and say thanks to Jack Roberts from Squirrel Tune YouTube channel. Go check out his channel. He's the one who actually sold me this stuff. He's a dealer for BTR, so I was able to get it right from him. He got it to me right away, and glad I was able to get stuff from him. Next, I can go ahead and put the timing cover back on. After the timing cover, I'll put the balancer back on, and I usually use a torch for heat when I put the balancer back on. It's pretty easy. You just heat up the center of the balancer for a couple minutes. Don't get it too hot. You only need it to be about 200, 250 degrees, and it'll slide on a crank pretty nicely. And don't worry about melting the crank seal, because you got to think the operating temperature of the engine is usually about 210 to 220 degrees, so you're not getting it much hotter than the engine actually operates anyways. So unless you have the thing red hot, you're not going to damage the seal. Now I have some other stuff I want to do before I put the radiator and the intercooler back in the truck. I want to weld another elbow onto the intercooler. Instead of using a 90-degree coupler, I'm going to do that out of aluminum, and I'm going to weld a section on there. So I got some more work yet to do on a different day, but today I want to start it and we can see what it sounds like. Now I do have my exhaust cutout open also, so it's going to be louder than normal. Alright, so everything seems to be working pretty good. Didn't hear any funny noises. Nothing's leaking. Should be good to go. So stick around for the next couple videos. I'll get this thing all back together and then we can go test it and drive a little bit faster. It did have stock cam and springs in, obviously, before. So I was only revving it out to about 5,800. So now I'll be able to rev it to 68, 6,900. And it should be a little bit quicker on the draggy. So stick around for that stuff. See you next time.